What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Catalyst Conversations. Today we have a very prudent entrepreneur with us, Andrew Reist of Valley Pets. And he's a guy that started his business as a side project, but has now grown it to where the business can be an occupation. So Andrew, welcome. Thanks so much for stopping by and making this happen.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, first question that we'd like to ask everybody is kind of give us in a nutshell your life story and specifically how you got into your line of work and what you do with Valley Pets.
Sure. I'm excited to talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think a good place to start is for me, I think I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I've always thought that I might be. And the reason for that is just as a kid, I always had ideas, business ideas. I remember one specifically when I was in elementary school. I started drawing these spaceship-like, drawings on a piece of paper, and for some reason I thought people would want to buy them, and so I
just the drawings.
Just the drawings. It was like black and white pencil, like it kind of looked like Star Wars, Star Wars fighter, TIE fighter, that kind of thing. And so I like convinced my dad to make copies of them, and I think I sent some to my family. No one ever bought anything, but that's just one example. I've always had ideas and things that I wanted to do in terms of business, but I guess I never really followed through. And I think the reason for that is I just wasn't super passionate about it, because entrepreneurship is tough. Yeah. And so when those challenges or those hurdles came, I would give up. Like, for example, with the whole spaceship thing as a kid, my dad, he was trying to teach me a lesson, and so he said, he was like, "Hey, this is great, but I'm gonna have to charge you 25 cents a copy or something like that." Yeah. And I was livid. I was like, my own father would charge me.
That's a good businessman.
Yeah, but I mean, exactly. He was a lesson he was trying to teach me, but I think I was like, you know what? No way. If my own father's going to charge me, this isn't worth it. I'm not paying for that. So
that's a great story. Yeah.
But I think where I got into Valley Pets and in this business, it really was inspired by necessity and personal experience. So my dog, I've got a dog, Bailey. She's a little Cavapoo, about 25 pounds. And around 2017, she had a stomach rash that just would not go away. And so we tried all kinds of things. We thought maybe there was something in the lawn because we were having the lawn treated. So we stopped doing that. We changed her food, but the rash wouldn't go away. Finally, we found this medicated cream that was working. But the problem is she would lick off the cream, which was, I'm sure, not good to ingest, and then it was making the rash worse too. So we went back to the vet, and the vet actually put her in the dreaded plastic cone.
The e-collar.
Shame, the e-collar,
sure, yeah.
Exactly. And she hated it. She was like tipping over the water bowl. She was running into furniture, just not herself. And the cream was working, but she had to wear this thing for like weeks and weeks. So we actually went back to the vet. And I was like, is there anything else we can do? What can we do? And so he actually recommended putting her in a baby onesie. Conveniently, she was like about that size.
About the size of a baby, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it fit pretty well. And so I've got a background in design engineering, a bachelor's in mechanical engineering, and then that's been my profession since graduating in 2015. Yeah. And so I was like, you know what, like, this it kind of works, but there's some issues with it, and so I decided to essentially design what we call the belly guard recovery onesie, which is a cone of shame alternative for dogs. So it's used for any kind of rash, that kind of thing, but also the biggest application is for spay and neuter recovery. Yeah. So that's kind of how I had the idea. Okay. So that was in 2017. I made some modifications to that onesie, and then. Baby steps from there. But the short story is that, we had some products made locally, and we did a test run selling them on Amazon, just a few. And I remember when the first one sold, I was like over the moon. That was probably one of the best feelings. Yeah. One of the best feelings of my life. And then we so based on that, it gave me the confidence that, hey, other people want this, Yeah. And I think one cool insight is, if you're thinking about launching a product or an idea, is that having it be a personal experience, something that you're passionate about, that you know about because it is your personal experience, and then having it be something that that's useful to you. It helps with the brand story, but then there's probably other people that have the same experience and frustration as you. So if there's a frustration that you're trying to solve for, probably other people have that same frustration, that same experience, which was thankfully the case with my product. And so sold a few, and that gave me the confidence to go overseas offshore and make a larger batch of product. And then we launched it on Amazon in 2019.
Yeah.
And we've been selling since. And so it's been slowly growing. It's been like the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. hustle.
Sure.
And so I've been growing it little by little, reinvesting in the business. And then last September, I quit my engineering job to run this full time. It was just at a position where I couldn't do both things. I couldn't do my engineering job and this well.
Yeah.
And so I just had to make a decision. And so I took the leap and went for it.
Now, was that purely a numbers decision, or because you mentioned passion a little bit earlier? So how does that like if somebody's deciding, let's just say they've got a good side hustle going, and they're considering making it a full-time thing, and they feel like they've got enough evidence to make that happen.
Yeah.
What outside of the money, because obviously you got to sustain your life, but outside of that, what else factors into that decision?
I think for me it was I loved working on it,
Yeah.
and I wanted to work on it, and that's the only thing that gave me the energy and the strength to push through and
Sure.
put in all those extra hours for years to build the business, is because I enjoyed it so much. That, and I think with my family, I really wanted to have flexibility and be able to work from home or be able to work from anywhere, and not be tied to a long commute or a 9 to 5, and that was something that was very important to me and my family. And so I think those kind of two things combined help push me over the edge. But the financial piece is definitely part of it.
Yeah.
I maybe could have made the leap a little earlier. I tend to be fairly conservative, conservative with that, and so. But yeah, just taking it one step at a time and building it on a side without making a major decision.
Sure.
Helped. But I think for me too, I mean, I always have the backup plan of, if for some reason it didn't work out, I could always go back into engineering.
You've got a very solid set of skills. Yeah.
Yes.
For
and
sure.
so I feel like kind of having that backup plan. But I'd say the passion and just people say if you if you do what you love, you
yeah, for sure. Yeah. Dylan said that as well. So.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was it for me. This was something
Sure.
I loved, and I would say the other important piece is you want to constantly be learning. And so if there's an opportunity where you can learn something, continue to grow yourself and invest in yourself as an individual, that'll pay dividends long term. Even if your the side hustle doesn't work out or the business doesn't work out, those are skills that you're going to be able to apply in whatever you do next.
Yeah, there's this great quote by this guy Alex Hormozi. Maybe some people have heard of him, but he goes he talks about the story where he built this business and lost it all overnight. And what he said to your point is that he thought that he was building this gym business, but he was actually building himself, which is a huge insight, because even after the gym businesses went to zero, he had retained all of the skills and abilities and all of the finer points of getting it to however big he got it. And so that's kind of what you're saying, is that even if you fail, what you've done is you've augmented your own ability to function in the world.
Right. That's so true, and that's almost like the silver lining if you can do it from a financial standpoint, and afford to take that risk. Even if you fail, even if the business fails, it's not necessarily viewed as a failure.
Sure.
A lot of the most successful people launched 1, 2, 3 businesses that failed, and then later on it worked out because of that, because all the lessons learned.
Okay,
very
great.
True.
Now let's just say I have this fun scenario that I pitch to people. Let's just say in the next 5 minutes, your memory is going to be erased, but you this new version of you is also going to want to get into the pet supplies industry.
Okay.
What is one thing that you would leave behind for this new version of you in terms of the business, and then what's one thing that you would leave behind in terms of life in general?
So one thing that I would not do, and one thing that I would do.
One thing that you would advise a the new you who also wants to get into the pet supplies.
If I had to restart.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, if you had to restart, if your memory was completely wiped away, but you could write something down for this new version of you.
I think one thing that's really benefited me was focusing on doing the things myself that I know how to do, which I don't know how that works if my memory is erased, but
right.
But like, you know, from my experiences in engineering, product design, and so I tackled that side of things with the business, but not being afraid to like admit the things that you don't know how to do and your weaknesses, which for me is marketing, you know, website design, logistics, that kind of thing.
Yeah, all the other things that kind of make a business go.
Correct. And so I utilized other people. I hired contractors a lot of times just part-time, just to pick their brain, like, hey, how do I do this? What's the best way to set this up? What do you think? And so I think just sticking with that, maybe not necessarily trying to do everything yourself, but relying on the knowledge of others, and that I think you can learn something from everyone you come in contact with.
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Well, and I think it's important to at least be mildly competent everywhere, so that you're not completely dependent on one person to do all the thinking for you. I think is this kind of what you're saying.
Yeah, correct. That's a great point, because I would say if you don't know what it should look like and how it should run, it's hard to, you know, teach someone else, or if you have an employee, how to guide them. What to do. But I think in certain areas, like I'll give you an example. We wanted to launch into a wholesale business and go direct to veterinarians and pet hospitals and clinics. But I wasn't sure. Do vet clinics sell product in the store, or do they not?
Yeah.
Are they open to carrying inventory? How do they purchase? Do they purchase from websites? Do they purchase from distributors? And so actually, this was during COVID. But I used like a freelancer website. I happen to use Upwork. And so I hired a vet on there for
great.
like, you know, I think they charged like $60 an hour or something. So I hired him for 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I got to pick their brain. The amount of stuff that I learned in 30 minutes talking to the person for
that's
$30
huge. Yeah, absolutely.
was just incredible. I didn't have anyone personally in my network to really talk to. But that's something where I was able to learn a lot pretty quickly, without, it eliminated probably some failures, right? It kind of gives you a boost in the right direction.
Well, and then those marketplaces exist, which is a huge blessing. Technology comes with its problems, but one of the things that it allows is just the rapid acquisition of information, and also the people the systems that allow for that.
Yep.
Okay, so that's industry advice. How about life advice? One thing that you would leave to yourself.
I think it's always a balance for me of I want to work hard, because I know, time is limited, right?
Yeah.
You only live once. So in one sense, it's like, okay, I want to go for it and work really hard. So I think that's important. But at the same time, it's, maybe not working too hard, or at least not spending too much time. Kind of the whole point for me, one of the main benefits of business and is being able to have the flexibility and live the life that you want, and afford yourself some time. Right,
yeah.
You're essentially spending money to buy time.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one principle that just remembering to take those moments and spend time with your family or loved ones, or whoever those people are in your circle, is one thing I think I'm doing a better job of now.
Sure.
But that's one thing that I would want to continue to do.
Yeah, and it's not easy because you put your head down, and obviously, I mean, a business is very much like a child, in the sense that it cannot take care of itself until a certain point. So you need to put in those sleepless nights and all those hours early to get it up on its feet. And so but balancing that with your other obligations and your other relationships, that's not easy. But what you're saying is definitely don't let anything drop off. Yeah,
I guess my fear is that. I heard this. It's a mini story. I'll share it. I'll try to be really quick. But basically, the premise is, the successful businessman he goes on vacation in Jamaica.
Yeah, right? Sure. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard this story. He talks to the fisherman. He talks to the fisherman. So he talks to this fisherman. The guy's fishing on the beach with his son, And the businessman is like, hey, why don't you could get a boat, and then you could go out deeper and catch bigger fish and make more money. And then the guy's like, okay, well then what would I do? And then he's like, okay, well then you could buy another boat and hire someone. And he's like, okay, great, then what? Eventually it leads to, okay, you could become the boss of this huge fishing empire. And then he's like, okay, and then what? And then the story boils down to, he's like, okay, well then you can retire rich and sit on the beach and fish with your son. And that's what he's doing now. So I guess that's kind of what I was getting at before, is like, I don't want to work super hard so that for this dream that someday I'll be able to, like, have all this wealth, which will afford me the time so I can spend with my family.
And leave everything else by the wayside.
And leave everything. And it's like, I'm going to neglect that for 20, 30 years and then try to win it back. Later. When I just don't want to make that mistake. And so I think, like, there's definitely something to working hard, absolutely, but but there's a balance there, and want to make sure
Okay, now in terms of, let's just imagine that I'm just coming out of high school, and I want to maybe get into your line of work. How would you recruit me to your industry, or what would you say to somebody who's looking to get started?
So I think in consumer products, which is really where
that's kind of your category
expertise is.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean specifically now I'm in the pet industry, but consumer products, I would say, I think I'd have to go back to saying, really the best ideas come from your own personal experience.
Sure.
And so really focusing on, a lot of people will try to, launch the product, and it's kind of like, well, why are you launching that? What's the purpose? What's the benefit? So I think, if you could focus on finding an issue and a problem that you're solving, and if that's a personal experience or frustration that you have, trying to solve that problem via a product is, I think, is kind of like the key to getting started. Okay,
great. And what is the scrappiest thing that you've done as an entrepreneur?
Ooh, scrappiest.
Like sometimes I know like you have to use yourself as a model. When you're in your photo shoots or whatever, as you're displaying product. I know you've used your dogs before, that kind of thing. But is there anything more scrappier than that and actually you're hiring a vet for $30 and then just draining the knowledge out of them is probably also pretty scrappy. That's pretty crafty.
I've done that a lot. The amount of people that I've hired, like, just for 30 minutes, just to pick their brain, I've definitely gotten my money's worth, which is pretty scrappy. I'll say the one other thing that's pretty scrappy is, so we have a patent on our product.
Okay.
And I actually did all the drawings.
Okay.
For that. And essentially what I did is I took pictures and, like, converted those into drawings, but I learned how I just did a bunch of reading on how to do the drawing, certain line weights and what dashed lines mean and this and that.
Yeah.
Oh, it took so much time, but that was pretty scrappy.
Give us just a quick insight into dealing with if somebody thinks that they've got a unique thing and wants to apply for a patent. Give us like the wave tops of what that process looks like.
Yeah. So first of all, it takes a long time from the time you apply. It's years.
Yeah.
Which is fine because you kind of lock in the intellectual property at the time of application. So there's two types of patents. Design is basically like the look and feel of the product. If I was going to patent this shirt, it was just basically what it looks like. So no one could make a shirt that looked exactly like this. And then there's utility patents, which are more based on function. So this shirt has a zipper and it's in the front, so you could patent that, and no one else could make a shirt with a zipper in the front that had that same kind of function. And so I would say, but I think my guidance, a lot of times people almost want to go to a patent too soon. Patents are expensive. They're probably $2,000 to $10,000, depending if it's design patent or utility patent. And so personally, I would say I would want to test the market first. Make sure that there's a demand for the product before patenting it, or at least doing those kind of at the same time. Because I think sometimes people will get a patent on a product and then realize nobody wants the product.
Right.
And so you wouldn't want you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, there's that whole huge challenge that probably every entrepreneur faces of like, when do I make the big money investments? Like we were talking about earlier. If you're going to turn a little side project into a legitimate business, there's all sorts of protections and other things that you have to, and machinery and whatever else, storage space that you have to invest in. So there's definitely that challenge of when do I start shelling out big dollars to make all that come to fruition.
My strategy is I've tried to wait as long as possible.
Sure.
And it did take me a long time, right? So I started the business and I had the idea in 2017. I didn't really have a product for a year and a half. And so here we are like 6 years later, and I've just started to pay myself this year.
Yeah.
But I will say there's no debt on the business and I own it all.
Sure.
The other option is, you go out and you raise money and get someone to invest, but then and you can do things a lot faster. But you're giving away equity, and there's also more risk, I would say, involved.
Yeah.
So my strategy has been to wait on those big purchases and to try to do things as scrappy as you can.
As lean as possible, yeah.
As lean as possible, and what's the quickest and cheapest way you can learn what you need to learn?
Yeah.
Like, for example, do other people want this product? Do people like it? So maybe it's making a prototype, or maybe it's buying a product that's basically similar to yours, having people test it, see if they like it, and then say, okay, now what if I change this or that? Would you like it more? Would you like it less? Go to family, friends, and then just hand some out. So it's like, how do you learn what you need to learn as cost effectively as possible?
I mean, there's you're basically, you've hit a bunch of stuff that is like similar to what there's this entrepreneur, Eric Reist, who wrote the Lean MVP or the Lean Startup, whatever.
Yep.
And he talks about how they had this master plan of getting the best minds together, disappearing them for 3 years, building this thing, and then they launch it and absolutely nobody wanted it. And they spent forget about the money, just the years in time that are wasted to build something that nobody wants. So that's huge. There's this episode of Shark Tank where the lady spent probably into the six figures getting national and international patents and all these protections for something that was like, I don't want to call it a commodity, but it was like, I think it was like a kid's fruit juice.
Okay.
So those mistakes are very, very costly. And so what you're saying is just try as much as possible to make sure that you've actually got something that runs before you sink a ton of money into it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's good. I know you're still fairly young in the consumer goods game, but tell us a little bit about what does it take to be good in your space, and maybe what does bad look like and what does great look like? If you can parse that out. I don't know if
I think for me, my background is in product design, and so for me, I focus a lot on the product. What's better about your product? Why is it different than what else is out there? And why will people want it? Why will people use it? So if you can answer those questions and get proof that that's the answer is what you think it is.
Yeah.
That really helps and goes a long way in terms of developing a good product and launching a good product. I think the other difference is the financials. With the service business, it's more about being great, and you can kind of charge more for your services as you go. But with the consumer goods, just doing some upfront rough numbers, even if it's on a napkin of like, hey, this is what I'm going to sell it for, this is what the product costs, and these are all my costs, and so making sure that there's a profit at the end of the day.
Yeah, right.
Is key.
Have you had to deal with any? Have you had to deal with any knockoffs yet, or anything of that nature?
Thankfully, no. I was actually worried about that early on,
Sure.
And so I pretty quickly, made sure I put patent pending on my tag there. And so I haven't had any direct knockoffs, although the space is a lot more crowded. When I launched, there was one other company that sold a similar product or similar purpose,
right.
And now there's a whole ton, and so it's a lot more competitive. But I haven't had any direct knockoffs, thankfully.
Okay, that's good, and hopefully it stays that way. What are some of your, I call them isms? So what are the things that you have, what are the kind of ideas that you've come back to, or that you've formed your business around as you've been like as you converse with people, what are some of the things that are always in your quiver that you pull out as like for example, like Dylan said, don't sell on value, not on cost. So
yeah.
Anything that you localize around in terms of your thoughts as you're talking about business?
I think one thing is when it comes to ideas, I've talked to some people that they'll have an idea. The idea, having a great idea is super important, but I think at the end of the day, it's like 1% of like the big picture, right? Because there's so many X's and O's and so much work that goes into it. So I'd say like don't be afraid to like share those ideas and get feedback. Now, if your idea's for like a new shoe design, maybe don't go to the your buddy who makes and sells shoes, but like generally I wouldn't be afraid to get feedback from people and input. I think there's definitely going to be more benefit there than potential risk. The other thing I would say that's important to me, and I do sometimes too soon, is I try to offload work. So I like to learn and grow and keep developing the business, and so as soon as there's an opportunity for something that's kind of like a repetitive task that needs to happen every day or every week or every month, I typically try to build some kind of system or process and offload that to someone else who can do it more consistently, and that just frees up my time to be growing the business.
Is that like contract work, or is that automation, or do you actually hire somebody locally to do that, or?
I would say it's both. So for me, it's mostly contract work, but it's also automation. So maybe it's sending emails or just documentation where it's less manual and putting numbers, and there's some kind of API or system that dumps info into an Excel spreadsheet for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. This thing about you mentioned ideas. I think ideas are easy to come by, but not everybody can come by them. So it's like it is. I want to say it is 1%, but it's like a critical 1%. But it does take a lot of just to have a good idea isn't enough, because not only do you have to bring it to life, but you also have to see how it survives. Because there's in the marketplace, there's some ideas that come too early or too late. Yeah.
Totally agree. I think, and this is a great question. I think what makes a good idea is, I would say, one is, if it's a problem, like I mentioned this before, if it's a problem, it's your personal experience. Like with me, my dog absolutely hated the cone, and so and like you want your dog to be comfortable. It's just like a member of your family, right? And seeing your dog miserable is pretty brutal. And so, that for me was the problem I was trying to solve. And at the time, there weren't other products that I was aware of that solved that problem. And so it's like, if I'm having that problem, other people are probably having that problem as well. And so I think coming up with an idea that solves a problem for you, it probably solves a problem for other people.
Right.
And so just going about your day, if you're trying to come up with a product or some kind of product, maybe it's not even a consumer product, it could be a service. But it's just go about your day and think of what are the things that annoy you on a day-to-day basis? What are the things that frustrate you on a day-to-day basis? And then it's like, well, maybe can I improve this somehow?
Right.
I think that's really what makes the best ideas.
Right. That's a good insight. Let me hit you with this. Can you think of anywhere in the process of building your business? Can you think of a light bulb moment where something clicked and that really allowed you to go to a next level? Maybe talking to the vet or something like that. Is there any? And you might not think of or have anything come to mind, but
I definitely one thing that clicked for me. I used to think if you build a website and just put your products on the website, your product will sell. Right. And so that was a light bulb moment to figure out, well, it's like, no, you need to get a way to drive traffic to your website.
Right.
So people see your product, and that's not going to happen by itself. So whether it's social media pushing to there, whether it's writing, one thing I realized is if you can write blog posts or content on your website and post that's relevant, that people actually want to read and is useful.
Yeah.
Google's going to index that So if people are on your website and they're spending time reading your page, like all that information goes back to Google, and they'll say, hey, your website's relevant, and then you'll start popping up when people search, search relevant keywords. So you got to figure out a way to drive people to your website.
I think this is probably like engineers and other kind of serious-minded people don't like the idea of marketing, because they will probably, like, internally the dialogue is like, okay, I built this really good thing and I don't have to prove it to anybody, right? Is that just pretty much?
Yeah, I do. I have like a love-hate relationship with marketing. It's super important. But I always tend to go back to like, hey, if my product is awesome, it'll speak for itself. But people also have to see your product and know about your product so that they can try it. And so you definitely need marketing, and you have to have a good plan. Yeah.
And the analogy that I use is you could have just the greatest, most luxury car, but if it sits in your garage full time, then nobody's going to know about it. If you've created the next best thing, but it's on the 17th page of the Google results,
right,
then obviously nobody's going to, nobody's going to find that. Nobody's going to love it. So marketing gets people to recognize and gives them the opportunity to fall in love with something, with a product that they obviously wouldn't know existed otherwise. So, and that's not a slight to your design ability or your or the product or anything. It's just the fact of the matter is that if people don't know it, they won't buy it.
Right.
So, okay. So what's next for Valley Pets, and what's the dream? What's the next big goal, and maybe what's the 60-year plan, as I like to say here?
That is a good question. So I think for me, I want to grow it to the point where I can essentially have the potential to be a sole provider for our family. We've got a 2-month-old at home, and so my wife also has a business of her own, photography business.
Sure.
But which she plans to continue to do, but I think getting to the point where she doesn't have to do that if she doesn't want to.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
That would be the goal. And so I think we've got some additional product launches coming down the road, which we'll be building out. So we're kind of planning on focusing on being a recovery-specific brand for dogs. So there's some other products that we're kind of thinking about to grow revenue and thinking about 2024 and 2025. And then I think long-term, it's a good question. We'll see kind of how far. Potentially after, if we tackle this kind of recovery category, we could kind of branch into some other categories. But we'll try to see. It's a tough question to ask, because I like to focus on innovation and kind of meeting those problems, and you can't really force it. I think probably the best way to answer your question, like I can't necessarily see the future, but I can let you know when I get there, I guess.
Okay, sure. Yeah. So it sounds like you're being very methodical, and like you only think in terms of like, what does the next maybe year look like, or the next 2 years, and you're really keeping your mind focused on that and not thinking, letting your imagination run away.
It's also a challenge for me I'm less of a visionary,
sure.
It's more challenging for me to think about like, what do I, the big picture. It's more about the X's and O's and building the systems and processes, and let those efficiencies and the system kind of drive the business.
That's it's interesting, because when we last episode I spoke to Dylan, and he didn't necessarily want to be an entrepreneur, but found that he was good at it. And now I'm talking to you, and it's you're saying that you don't necessarily you're not a visionary, which is like people would typically correlate that with entrepreneurship. So it's great that entrepreneurs or business people come in all shapes and sizes, and you need that variety because of the great variety in the world. You need different people, different keys for different locks. Basically.
Right. Well, and I think it's supplementing. I talked about before, finding your strengths and then knowing your strengths, and then kind of finding other people to supplement your weaknesses.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for me, being a visionary and planning out what I want the next 5, 10, 60 years to look like is more challenging for me. It doesn't come naturally, and so I'm having to intentionally spend some time aside to think about those things and talk to
Absolutely.
people that are going to ask me good questions. And that helps. But maybe you're the visionary, and that comes naturally to you, and you need kind of to talk to someone who's like X's and O's of like, hey, what's the next step I take to get to that vision?
Yeah.
But the vision's important, because if you don't have a vision and this thing that you're striving for, and you're not passionate about it, it's kind of like it's really tough to get up, every day after day, and hustle.
Yeah.
And so setting that vision and that goal is very important.
Ultimately, you have to have a direction, even if you can't see 1,000 miles out.
Right.
I think that's fair to say. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Last thing here is there anything else that you want to kind of tell the audience, or is there any question that you would have liked me to ask, or anything of that nature?
I think one thing, like I said, I've been more conservative. So I think sometimes people think that, if they want to start something, they just have to go for it and go all in. And maybe you have to in order to do it. But I think for me, like, this was a slow thing. I had the idea in 2017, and I worked on it on the side more and more as the years went on, and it grew and grew and grew slowly. But I will say, it has to be a project of passion and love. Like you said, it's like raising a baby.
Yeah.
Because it takes time. Most businesses, aren't profitable for a long time. I think in my case with, my business and then my wife's business, it was 3 years, 4 years.
Yeah.
And so the first years are just kind of reinvesting in the business and growing, building the website or buying equipment or buying inventory or whatever it may be. And so it takes time. And so I would say, just be patient with it, but keep going. If you can get one thing done every day, one step towards your goal, that is a win. Yeah. Success is found in today, not in the future.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's why I kind of I think I called you a prudent entrepreneur at the beginning, because I know that you did, like, it was this very methodical transition to raising the business up to where it could sustain you.
Yeah,
and obviously the journey isn't over, but you're well on your way. So, last thing we'll do is here's another 60 years to Valley Pets. Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. If you want to, where can people reach you?
You can reach me on my email, which is sales@valleypets.com.
Okay.
Or website. Yep.
valleypets.com. And then, do you still sell on Amazon or any?
We do.
Any of that?
We sell on Amazon. Yeah. We're on Chewy, and then we sell wholesale direct to vets and clinics, hospitals, pet stores, that kind of thing.
And what should they search for? Valley Pets or Belly Guard?
So if you're looking for the product for your dog, you should search Belly Guard.
Okay.
If you're a veterinarian or own a pet store and want to check out the product, go to valleypets.com.
Okay, beautiful. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Take care. Till next time. Bye.